Okay, 3, 2, 1. All right. Hello, everybody. This is WNBA with Shay, and I am here with 5-Out Basketball, also known as Peter. I'm really excited. We're going to be talking about the Phoenix Mercury. Just doing a little bit of an overview. We got a couple questions prepared that we want to go over, and kind of it'll touch on all the important things, I hope. And yeah, it's going to be a fun time. How you doing, Peter?
Doing well. Doing well. Happy to be here.
Yeah. So where, just if people are listening, where can people find you, or what are you up to?
I'm on Twitter at 5-Out Basketball, the number 5, and then I'm writing about the WNBA at my website is 5-Out Basketball spelled out.
Very cool. So I guess we'll just jump into it now. So the Phoenix Mercury, they went 15-19 last year, so they landed 8th, and they were 7th in the league for offensive rating, 9th in the league for defensive rating, and they ended up losing the first round to Chicago, 105-76. But I don't think anyone was really expecting them to win, unless Diana decided to come out strong, but she didn't. So just to go do a little bit of an overview right now of what the roster is looking like and what happened during the off season. So the roster right now, they have Jessica Breland, Nia Coffey, Sophie Cunningham, Skylar Diggins-Smith, BG, Hartley, Alana Smith, DT, Brianna Turner, Kia Vaughn, and Shatori Walker-Kimbrough. So that's 11 people. And I'll tell you guys what went on in the off season, just so you have that sort of in your head. They lost both Littles to retirement. Dewana Bonner went over to Phoenix, and then they got a bunch of trades. And then with those trades, they got Skylar Diggins-Smith from Dallas, of course. And then there was a 3-team trade between Atlanta, Connecticut, and Phoenix. So Williams went from Connecticut to Atlanta. And then Atlanta gave over Breland and Coffey to Phoenix, and then Phoenix sent over January to Connecticut. So they lost January and got Breland and Coffey. So that's and then there were trades in there somewhere, but I didn't write those down because it's fine. They picked up Kia Vaughn in April. Leilani went to Washington. Bria Hartley they got from New York. Shatori Walker-Kimbrough they also got from New York, and Shatori was part of the Charles trade, so she quickly went over to what?
She was a draft night trade for Jasmine Jones, the draft pick.
I thought Jocelyn Willoughby.
Jocelyn Willoughby, you're right. I'm sorry, Jocelyn Willoughby.
Yeah, so
wrong Liberty player.
Yeah. Well, Shatori Walker-Kimbrough went to New York during the Charles trade, and
then from there.
For Phoenix's 10th pick, who was Jocelyn
Willoughby. Good.
So just a quick overview of that. So they lost both Littles, Dewana Bonner, January, Mitchell, Yvonne Turner from injury, and Carson. I think that's it. We might run into someone else that they lost. So they lost 7 people. And then they gained Skylar, Breland, Coffey, Kia Vaughn, Bria Hartley, and Shatori Walker-Kimbrough. So they had a crazy off season for sure.
Yes.
Just quickly, if we to go over what happened last year and their style, do you want to kind of take that on? Like, what were they running most of the time on offense? How were they on defense? You want to take that up?
Yeah, they scored pretty well in the half court. They were 3rd per synergy and points per possession, but they were hurt because they played slowly and didn't get out in transition much. I don't have the statistics in front of me. And that mostly made sense when you have Brittany Griner. It makes sense to turn it into a half-court game.
Right.
But
even so, it's kind of weird because Vegas was pretty fast.
Exactly.
And they have 2 bigs instead of just Griner.
Yeah.
But they are an older team. So, yes, sorry, continue.
Yeah. So I think that hurt them. And then they were definitely lacking in sort of perimeter shot creators last year. They didn't really have Dewana Bonner was asked to do probably more than she in a perfect world would be asked to do, and she performed pretty heroically, but especially as the season wore on, her efficiency numbers weren't particularly stellar. And then they did in the playoffs. It was tough. Brittany Griner went out with an ankle injury pretty early on in that game against the Chicago Sky, and so it would have been nice to see what would have happened if she had stayed healthy. I still think the Sky would have won, but it would have been probably closer.
Yeah, yeah. I actually completely forgot about that actually. Yeah, I think they did a lot of pick and rolls and left it with the ball handlers. That's for synergy. And then, of course, they did a lot of post ups with BG. But yeah, I mean, also Duana Bonner was a huge part of the pick and roll part of that. Sorry, I forgot to mention that.
Mm-hmm.
And she was pretty good at it. But yeah, I think she had too big of a role. I mean, considering the circumstances, I think that's what had to happen. But
Yeah.
I think she'll do a lot better in Connecticut. And this is
So,
like, yeah, sorry, go.
I actually am a little. This is obviously for a later thing. I think at this point in Duana Bonner's career, she's better off with the 4. She's faster than a lot of 4s, and though she's very skinny, she's just pretty strong, and it doesn't get overwhelmed that much. And so I'm a little concerned that both last year with Phoenix and this year with the Suns, she's playing down a position. When they get older, they often move up to like from 3 to 4 to 4 to 5. So
Gotcha.
that's a conversation for the Sun for a separate day, but it'll be interesting to see how that works.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. So you want to talk about who you think the starting 5 is? I'll let you go first there.
So the 3 obvious are, assuming health, are Brittany Griner, Skylar Diggins-Smith, and but the 3 and the 4 are where it gets really interesting, because I'm not sure. Bria Hartley is 5'8" and is a 2, so it's interesting to see. She was paid a big contract, so presumably that might come with some expectation of starting. But then you're moving Diana Taurasi to the 3.
Right.
When certain matchups that'll work, but like if you're facing Chicago in Diamond to Shields, that's asking a lot of 38-year-old Diana Taurasi.
Right.
At the 4, I'm not sure. I imagine it'll be either Brianna Turner or Jessica Breland. I'd lean Turner. She doesn't provide spacing, but neither does Breland really. And then, so I guess if I had to pick, I'd say Bria Hartley and Brianna Turner round out the rotation, but that's mostly a guess. I'm not sure.
Okay, yeah. I obviously thought it was Griner, DT, and Skylar Diggins-Smith. I did that in a weird order at 5-3-1. And then I put Hartley at the 2. Also for the same reason as you, of like the pay just seems like it would merit her being in the starting lineup, or just like her agent is an incredible, I don't know, negotiator. So and then I thought Breland would probably start over Turner. I think maybe after 11 games, halfway into the season, if Turner kind of gets her legs under her, she might be able to start. But yeah, it's kind of hard because Breland can't shoot, and I think that Breland nor Turner can shoot. So that's gonna be hard for Griner for sure to maximize her as much as possible. Yeah, what do you think? Let's talk about Griner a bit here. You had a good question with this, what was it? How can you maximize her, and if she's any good? So I guess I said that in the wrong order, but I'll tackle the second question of if she's any good. I think she's very good. Obviously she's very good. Her rebounding is something that people definitely harp on. But she's an incredible player. I think she's really athletic. Let's see what numbers I was able to pull out here. For post ups, she had most in the league by like over 100. And she was just as efficient, if not more efficient, than the other players of her caliber. And yeah, I just think, and that's what she's gonna need to do most. I think that's her best position. She's definitely improved her outside game a bit, which is encouraging. I don't think that that's necessarily maximizing her, but it might help maximize the team to bring her out a little bit, just so people can drive to the basket and stuff. So that's a little distinction I made too. But yeah, I think I think she's a great player. And I'll send that question over to you, and then we'll get on to the maximize question, or you can take on both questions, really, whichever.
So, yeah, for the record, my question was how good is Briner, not is she any good? I think she's good. I just was curious
How
where she
good?
falls within the sort of top tier of centers. And I think that when in terms of how good she is, I think that asking her to shoot a little bit more and maybe trying to get her to shoot a couple of threes a game is an interesting way to maximize her because she's a really good shooter. That was something I definitely underestimated before I sort of looked into her. She's been 80% from the free throw line for her career. She shoots a very good number on on mid-range twos. Um, I don't think she should be like, obviously, I think she should still post a lot, but occasionally you could probably run a pick and pop with her once in a while just to show the defense a different look. Trailing threes, Skylar Diggins-Smith is fast. And so if they are able to run more this year, maybe have Reiner bring up, um, step into some trailing threes, I think would be an
Hmm.
interesting use of her. I
That would
definitely
be
think
very interesting. Yeah.
you already mentioned though the other part of maximizing her is shooting. Like in theory, you'd want her and four players who can shoot around
Right.
her in order to clear the paint, and that doesn't seem to be the direction that Phoenix is going, which
Right.
is the other confusing part because um, I'm not sure. She's so hard to guard in the post.
Yeah.
I'm curious where they're going. And then defensively, I do think changing the emphasis on spacing and 3-point shooting is a little harder for her defensively.
Right.
If you're a team such as Washington, particularly last year, that can drag her away from the paint,
Yeah.
it's a little harder. So I think she's still one of the best centers in the league, but maybe slightly less effective than she was a few years ago.
Yeah, yeah, and that comes with age as well. But I see what you're saying with, as the game is spreading out, it's making her job on the defensive end a lot harder. And maybe that's good for the other end of the floor though, if they have smaller players. If a team has five out, kind of um, maybe they just have smaller players in general. So it's kind of a give and take there. But yeah, I would say I don't think. Man, I should have looked into the numbers a little bit more. I would say she's um I'm a little bit more of an offensive minded person, I would say. So, I think she's better than Sil in that way. And I don't think she's quite as good as Liz overall. But yeah, there was something else that you wanted to mention about Brittany Griner. Do you want to mention that now or wait?
So sort of a counterintuitive take that I have about sort of the WNBA more broadly is that centers are sort of somewhat easier to find and that it's somewhat you can find above average production from the center position. So if you look at whoever the seventh or eighth best center in the league is, whether it's Stephanie Dolson, maybe she's a little higher, you tend to find good numbers, whereas it's much harder to find shooting guards and small forwards and especially big wings, sort of players who are between that 6 foot and 6'4" and can shoot threes and sort of play make. And so I do think that sometimes plays a little bit into how we should value players. I definitely think Jonquil Jones was a justified number 2 in the MVP last year, but I would have had a bigger separation between her and Elena Delle Donne than maybe other folks did, because Elena Delle Donne's ability to sort of play the 3 and the 4 as effectively as she is much harder to find.
Yes.
Than sort of if you look at the Sparks and Chinea Gumake is backing up, but she's pretty effective, and it's just really hard to find that kind of effective backups for shooting guards. It's one of the reasons I think Bria Hartley got her contract, even though it's I think over and overpay. It does make some sense given.
So you're saying it's a
You
little bit
find
harder to get.
production at that position.
Oh, sorry. So you're saying it's a little bit harder to get depth, in the front court and at the the back court. It's a little harder to get depth in the back court than the front court, and at the 3 position too, it's a little harder.
Particularly the wing, I think the wing is probably the hardest position to find. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the numbers, at least, I think defensively there are, PIPM definitely gives more value to bigs. I think that's just how the metric is going to have to be, because it's taking the box score. And I was talking about this a little bit with Snap the last time we my last podcast, and he and I think what his conclusion was, if I understood it correctly, sorry if I'm wrong, Snap, that it shows that the league is maybe a little bit more, it's more effective to have a big on the defensive end. Like it's just better. I don't know. But these numbers, these metrics seems to reward it more, like rim protection and stuff, and that makes sense just because of how the box score works, with blocks. It's just never going to happen really. Like no one blocks threes hardly ever, and there's just a lot more blocks to be had at the rim. So maybe that's why there's a bit of inflation for bigs, at least on the defensive end. I'm not quite as sure on the offensive end though. But yeah. Anything else you want to say about that part? Because I still haven't said my thing about maximizing Griner, but I want to still give you like time to talk if you're not done with that thought.
I've said mine.
Okay, cool. So I think the way that you maximize her, I think the ideal way is to put shooting around her just so that there's more space for a defender to have to cover to go down and double her, or making that defender have a second thought, like, do I go down and help, or do I leave a sharpshooter? And as you said, I don't think they really did that this year. However, and this runs into another question we wanted to hit on, of like how old the team is. So I think I think they didn't put the shooters there really. I mean, Bria Hartley, 32% from three. Who else? Shatori Walker-Kimbrough, not a great 3-point shooter, probably around the same. Same with Skylar, just not really known for their threes. Nia Coffey actually had a really good three-pointers this year. But I don't trust that number exactly.
Yeah, small number of
volume. Yeah, it was not a huge volume.
No,
it was like 37%. So who knows? And she was on a team that was not very good. So we'll see what happens there. So that doesn't. So clearly they're not really putting three around Griner as much. I mean, you get DT back, but that's a big question mark too. So I think the only good thing is that with all those players that I just talked about, subtract DT, is they got a ton younger. So, if these players can run around the court, that's going to force their defenders to keep following them. And if their youth kind of helps them with that, then that is helping Griner a bit. I don't know if it's maximizing her, but that would help. But I don't know if that would be the game plan. So that's one thought that I had. But you have the trade-off, or they just don't shoot. So that's an interesting trade-off I had there too. Yeah. I'm thinking about the 1 and 2 position here with, if you have with Shatori and Skylar and Hartley, like those three kind of being at the 1-2 position. And I was, they're a lot younger than the people who are at the 1-2 position last year and a couple years before that too, with January, with Leilani, with Yvonne Turner. Like Yvonne Turner, most people know, but I'll tell you that she's only in her 3rd or 4th year in the league. Also, she got hurt, which really sucks. But she's 30. She's over 30. She's 31, 32. Yeah. So they did get younger. So I think they got younger, but they also lost some shooting efficiency. The other thing, but part of the reason that they lost some of that efficiency there was because I think Shatori and Skylar and Hartley kind of they're not as much catch and shoot players. They're more playmakers. They're more not playmakers. They're more scorers. So they're trying to, they're taking people off the dribble. They're getting to the paint more so than Leilani and January. So, maybe that's where you lose some of the efficiency. So that's some of my thoughts on the backcourt. I think I have a little bit more, but I'll let you talk for a bit now.
Yep. Yeah. Shatori, in theory, is an okay shooter. Her college numbers were good, so it'll be interesting to see if that ever translates into the pros, because that would really help this team a lot. Skylar is a willing shooter, and she's okay. But yeah, you mentioned she's not particularly effective, but she's so fast and is a good finisher at the rim that I think she was a decent pickup. I mean, yeah, in a perfect world, she'd shoot 35% from three, but given what was available at the time, it made a lot of sense to get her. Bria Hartley is definitely the most sort of confounding contract of the offseason. She's getting the same pay as Courtney Williams, which seems odd given their ability levels and track record. Courtney Williams is a much better shooter from three and has sort of demonstrated the ability to, make plays in deep into the playoffs. Whereas Bria Hartley was on a not very good Liberty team.
Right.
And it also is interesting that the way you talk about youth, but they don't have any rookies this year. They only have 11 players because of the salary cap. You wonder whether they could have, between Hartley and I think they signed Kia Vaughn, whether they could have opened up a little bit of space to carry a 12th player and then maybe try out some rookies and maybe go younger, because Phoenix is not known for keeping rookies
Right.
or young players. They do have Alana Smith and Sophie Cunningham. Now, Alana Smith they're really high on, and so in terms of maximizing Griner, going back to that and the shooting, it would be interesting to see whether Alana Smith, if she's healthy this year, what she can provide. I mean, we barely saw her last year. She didn't play.
Did she get hurt, or she was just
She had ankle surgery, I'm pretty sure.
Okay, because I, when I looked at her film, or at least on offense, I didn't like what I saw. Really, I thought she was a little bit slow, and I thought she was tentative. I acknowledge she's a first-year player. She's a pretty good shooter as well, but I thought that she just looked very, very raw, and she wasn't used to being, the fifth biggest player on the court instead of the biggest player on the court. So I think she kind of looked like a deer in headlights sometimes.
Yeah.
So I was a little bit surprised that they kept her. I thought maybe I would go risk it on someone else, but it is what it is. What so you're saying you might have wanted to not sign Vaughn, but take up you for, if you get rid of her, get another 110K, you could have signed two more people. Is that what I'm understanding? Who were you looking at there to kind of pick up? I mean, obviously you need a big, but then what else?
Well, I mean, they might have been able to keep a second round pick, or this was a tough year to make a team. So is Beatrice Montpremier still not been signed by anybody? There's just other direction, and it's not always a bad idea to go with 11. Chicago's done that, and I think their roster makes sense. Washington has done that, and their roster makes sense.
Right.
I'm just not sure that, and particularly with Brianna Turner is only 6'3", but she's pretty athletic and a pretty good shot blocker. And so you almost wonder whether you could have stolen some minutes with her as a smaller five to back up Griner.
Interesting.
And then I definitely think between maybe sign Hartley and Vaughn, but then try to, carve out some. Because I'm not sure who they were bidding against with Hartley. I'd love, that's one of those impossible questions that we can never know the answer to, but it would be really fascinating to know.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there could be a documentary on this like off season one day, just how flippin' crazy it was, and with the COVID stuff. I think it could make for something interesting. But that's not my job. Yeah, I think Kia Vaughn's a fine pickup. She's going to help with the defensive end. But yeah, I think I'm okay with that. I mean, I'm not thrilled about it, but I don't know if I'm Brondello, I clearly like, older players, and, I think she did go younger. As I was saying, it's just not, it's not like super duper young. And I think maybe the reason for that is that she's still in a, with DT there, she's still like, hey, let's run with DT and Griner. Now we have SDS. Like having all of them together, maybe she thinks she can get away with it. And do well and get another championship for DT, but I don't see that happening. It just seems really difficult. I think they'll be a playoff team, but not super high.
Mhm.
I don't know. So maybe that's why she didn't go all the way young, to just be like, hey, let's just start over from scratch. Because I don't think she wants to start over from scratch with
No.
Diana, because Diana can't do it a third. She can't have another wave. It's just I mean maybe, but I highly doubt it. She would go into her 40s to play. So um, yeah, I think I mean if she could, she would, but I don't doubt that. But she's I don't know. It doesn't make sense to start totally from for Brondello. I don't think she wants to start totally from scratch. I think Griner has another wave in her, and same with Skylar, maybe even two with Skylar. But yeah.
Mhm.
More thoughts from you? No, okay. Where do you see how is Shatori gonna really fit on this team? I think we both agree that she was a backup. Is she gonna be like a one or a two? Where are you seeing her?
I I see her as a two. In the right matchup, she might be able to play a little bit of the three as long as it's not overwhelming. She had a pretty bad. She only had like a 9% assist percentage. She's not much of a passer at this point. She's mostly like get the ball and drive and look to score. So I think she'd be a little overmatched. This if with a fully healthy Diana Taurasi, you do have a little bit more positional flexibility since you could like have Shatori guard other point guards, but then have Diana basically run the point.
Yeah,
Um,
I
and so
I don't.
that
Yeah, I don't see why Shatori couldn't run the point either. I think she did some of that in Washington as a backup to Cloud. So,
yeah, I thought they put it with power. They had Powers handling the ball a fair amount too.
oh really? I could see
Powers
Powers and Shatori splitting those minutes when Cloud's on the bench at the point. But yeah,
yeah,
sorry, continue.
without Tolliver, yeah.
Oh, well, yeah, and Tolliver was hurt, like, for 11
So,
games. So,
but yeah, so it'll be interesting to see.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And man, what was I going to say? I'm a little bit concerned though about, with the shooting, like we can't really maximize Grinder with this lack of shooting. I mean, Breland, Turner, Vaughn, Smith is okay. Coffee has yet to prove herself. DT probably will be able to shoot, but we don't know her health exactly, but I'm sure the mechanics of shooting are not affected very much. Hartley's not a big shooter. We've said this already. Cunningham actually is. But like, how many minutes do you want to give her?
In theory, she didn't shoot well last year, but it shouldn't. So
Right.
hopefully she can turn around.
Yeah. So I just like Hartley, Skylar, Shatori all want to get to the rim, and like I'm a little bit concerned with the spacing of their front court with Griner, Vaughn, Breland, and Turner. There's no real space to get down there, so I'm just really concerned for how that's all going to shake out. Like it's almost like I would say that this is almost like a worse issue than that we see in Vegas. With the spacing, because I mean, at least Liz can kind of, Liz and Griner both kind of can get out like to the 3-point line sort of, but they got their
Mhm.
mid range. But I guess I can't say that Hartley and Shatori and Skylar are quite as bad shooters as D Rob, but there's not much there. There's like for spacing, I think.
Yeah. No,
Um,
there isn't. McBride's is a good shooter for Vegas. Obviously, the loss of Plum is pretty devastating for Vegas. And then obviously, they don't have a second post anywhere near Asia Wilson's level, Phoenix. So that's going to be interesting to see how it works.
yeah,
So you mentioned the backcourt. I'm actually really curious. I think the backcourt will shake itself out. I'm curious. They seem to have relatively little between like for the 3 and the 4. We already talked about this, but I just wanted to mention like the
yeah,
players between the height of like 5'10" and like 6'3" who are on the wing. There's Diana Taurasi, who's 6 foot, who's good, but maybe not defensively at this point. Going to lock people down. And then there's Sophie Cunningham and Nia Coffey. That's it. It's really going to be interesting to see how they handle, Nafisa Collier and Diamond Shields and
interesting.
Elena Deladon if she plays the 3 in a jumbo Mystics lineup.
Yeah,
even like Brianna Stewart, if she's out on the perimeter, and it'll be Brianna Turner moves her feet fairly well for
Yeah.
and is pretty laterally quick, but that's asking a lot of her from going from playing mostly center most of her career to like running around on the perimeter.
Yeah. And where do you see Smith? Do you think I kind of could see her at the 3 or 4? Um, I think
Uh,
she'd have an issue, but
I
either.
don't. She's the biggest. To me, she's the biggest wild card for me. I didn't get enough. She didn't play enough last year. I didn't watch her in college.
Yeah.
I don't know what her foot speed is like. Sophie Cunningham is actually pretty athletic and drives pretty. Is pretty. She can make a straight line drive if she gets a step on a player. Um, so if her shooting rounded or came around like it was in college, she'd be an interesting piece. But I don't know. Alana Smith is. I have no idea.
Yeah. Let's see what else. Oh, so you had a question about if they could have structured their contracts. We sort of touched on this already, but
Yeah,
if they could have what?
I brought that up already.
Yeah, but could they have structured their contracts so that they could have carried the 12th player, particularly a young player? Um, I guess if you've already given your answer, I'll give you mine. I mean, I think definitely they could have done that. I wouldn't have done it for Vaughn though. I mean, I just would have not. I mean, I maybe this is an easy answer, but I I just wouldn't have given Bria Hartley that much money if I could have helped it. Like as you said, we don't know what was going on behind the scenes, but like right now they have let's see how much money they have left. They have $36,500 left. So that's like half a contract right
Mm-hmm.
there. If you were to, I don't know, like if you cut Bria Hartley's contract to 155K, so minus 30K, you have $66,000 to give to someone. You can get anywhere between a, first year player to a third or fourth year player. I mean, that's you getting younger. And that's also getting a 12th person on the roster. I think, that's what I would have done, but of course I don't know what was going on in the room where it happened. So that's really the
Yeah,
only thing.
it
Yeah.
seems to be a little bit of an example of the winners curse, where if like 3 or 4 teams are bidding for a player, the team that bids the most is the one that wins, but then they're often the one that gets burned because they obviously bid the most. So that's
Right.
why free agency can be really tricky because I mean, obviously I'm happy for Bria that she got paid. Let's be clear.
Yes.
Um, but when there's a salary cap league, there's trade-offs, and so this is an interesting trade-off. And I hope she performs up to the contract, but I'm
Right.
skeptical.
Yeah. I mean, I liked what I saw from her. I mean, I didn't hate it. I think that she was able to create space for herself very well. She could shoot. We'll see how well that if she can get that percentage, that efficiency up a little bit. But yeah, I can't imagine that. What would if like ideally where would you how much would you pay her? Like where do you think she's valued?
That's a good question. Definitely not 185, but
Right.
I'd have to do a little more research to have a better answer. I
Yeah,
think
just
what
give it to me. You can think about it.
Shakina Strickland was at like 165,
Yeah, 165, I
I think.
think. Yeah.
And so I think maybe like the year 150 made sense. Like if they were gonna, I'm curious whether they talked to Shakina Strickland because Shakina Strickland seems like she would be a better fit for this lineup. That she
I'm
would,
sure they did.
yeah. And so it'd be interesting. I'm curious why she went to Atlanta. Because they could have given her a starting spot. They could have given her a lot of minutes. She would be a great fit next to Griner and Scarlett Diggins-Smith. So it's interesting that they went the route they did.
Yeah, I mean, I would have liked her on this roster a lot more than Hartley. If Shakina came in, then it would have been, DT at the 2, Skylar at the 1, and then Shakina at the 3. But it's like they didn't have. It was hard for them. I think the biggest loss it's got to be um, Duana Bonner. Like that's one of the biggest losses and biggest pickups, depending on which side you're on. And then replacing her with Breland, who I see as, one of the lowest, at least offensively, one of the lowest, front court players in the league. Just and that is biased by the team she was on. I don't know. It just is like, oof, that was a big downgrade. But
Yeah, I mean, salary wise, she basically got replaced by Skylar Diggins Smith.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not literally how it happened. And I think, hopefully Skylar can come back and play well. So we'll see if it works out. But I think I'm a little more skeptical of DeWanna Bonner's fit and Connecticut than you are. So I can't wait to find out.
Yeah. No, I mean, you mean her fit in Connecticut, or the fit in or
Yeah.
okay, yeah. I mean, I am too, but it's just a kind of we'll see sort of thing, and that's fine. And I've talked about this already today of like investing in, or of them bringing on young players and getting younger. I don't think I've heard your thoughts on that, because you did have a question on when should they start investing in young players, and my answer to that was like they already have. But I just am curious for your thoughts there.
Yeah, I think you changed my mind. I think I was thinking I underestimated getting Shatori and Bria, how young they are.
Yeah.
I still would have structured the contract to allow for one more rookie.
Yeah.
I mean, Shatori has proven herself to be a WNBA level player, so it's hard to pass that up for like Jocelyn Willoughby, who hasn't. But then
Well,
again,
I'm not
Jocelyn
so
Willoughby.
sure about I'm not so sure about Shatori, because think about the team she was on. She was on
That's
one of
true.
the best teams, so I'm not so sure if like
Mhm.
she is good, but like how much was that about the players around her? So
Yeah,
that sorry, continue.
but Jocelyn was Willoughby. I'm pretty sure she's like 6', 6'1". She's an athlete. She's sort of fits some of what they're missing. But then again, as a rookie, she may not have been ready to contribute. So I kind of get why they did what they did. But that would have been the other alternative to, I might have kept that 10th pick if I. But.
Right. Kept the 10th pick, and then you wouldn't have gotten Shatori, who's not, but yeah, I don't know how they would have gotten Shatori instead. I don't know how.
They wouldn't. I mean, they wouldn't have. I'm talking instead of
Yeah.
getting Shatori. You already have Bria Hartley, who plays the same position and is a similar player. And
Right.
that gives you another bigger wing as an alternative to who you have.
Yeah. And I just am curious to your comparison of Hartley and Shatori. Like how do you kind of compare them? Like I think Hartley's clearly the better one, but I was thinking that, I wasn't quite so sure which one would start, and then I like looked into the numbers and I was like, oh, Shatori's definitely the bench player. But how would you kind of compare them? I know I didn't ask this question before, so if you don't have an answer, that's fine, and we can move on. But
Yeah. So your point about how Shatori might have played better because of their teammates around her is well taken. But I also wonder a little bit what she'll do with more opportunity, because it was hard to carve out a role on a team that like Washington has drafted well and had a lot of veterans who are really good. And so the real question, swing skill, of course, I mean, it's a little cliche, but would be the 3-point shooting. Can Shatori get back to the 3-point shooting she showed in college? Can she, if her shooting comes around? I think she's a little bit better defensively, though neither are particularly stellar. I did watch Bria Hartley playing a little bit earlier today, and she was getting hung up on screens pretty easily and sort of losing her person.
yes.
That might have been because it was towards the end of a rough Liberty season, to be fair to her. But so I think Hartley's probably better, but I'm not sure how wide of a gap it is, and it'll be interesting to see how that plays out this year.
Yeah, I think it's hard to tell here also, like what we've been saying is like, yeah, Shatori was on a really good team surrounded by really good players, but Hartley was on a team that, I think some of the players were pretty good, but it was just so disjunct that they, were 11th instead of first in the league. They were 10 places back. I mean, it's just hard to even, compare them because of that. But, that's the fun of this. So, um, and I think Hartley's just better in the I hear your dog's barking. It's fine. Hartley's better with her passing, and I think that that's actually something that I wanted to mention before, was that that Hartley since she's a better passer, I think that will help maximize Griner. For Griner to keep maximizing, just another point here is just having people who can pass to her, so that she doesn't have to like go after the ball, and it's just like her job is to catch the ball that is given to her perfectly on a dime and then just turn around and do her thing, and so that I think will help maximize her. Sorry to go back to this. I just forgot to make this one point. And with the youth around her, maybe, since they are faster, perhaps, depending on the matchups, I guess, like maybe they'll be able to find like more openings and then be able to get that, a better passing angle or something. That might be a stretch, but I thought of it and I'm giving it out to the world. So,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
yeah, I think Hartley is, she's got to be the one that's better than Shatori, but I don't know if I'm guessing that that's not controversial, but I haven't talked to anyone about it, so I don't know. Um, and then the other thing with comparing those two is like Shatori was a second, like she was coming off the bench when Hartley was mostly not coming off the bench. Hartley started 18 of the 24 games she was in, so Hartley was going against a lot harder, had harder matchups, and Shatori had easier ones. So that's another element that I would consider, but I don't, I'm kind of beating a dead horse. This was just a comparison that I had fun making today and is not
Yeah.
like probably not that useful, but I did it.
I think it is useful because I think that's going to play a role in Phoenix this season. I mean, I think Shatori, they probably start with Bria, but I think Brondella has the cachet to say if Shatori outplays Bria Hartley, she'll play her.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that she'll do that. The other thing, though, Bria Hartley sort of got a lot of minutes on a not very good team, and somebody has to get minutes, where Shatori was able to – she had some moments in the playoffs where she was able to, like, contribute on a really good, like, team that won the championship. And
right.
So, like, I definitely – because, like, on those New York Liberty teams, somebody had to score.
Right. That's true.
But it's sort of hard to know. Probably Kia Nurse is a keeper, but there's a reason they've overturned a lot of their roster.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think we'll just see. That's kind of it. I mean, that's the whole thing. It's just like we're just gonna see. And what about Coffee? I thought, I don't know where in this three-way trade with January and that three-way trade with Connecticut and Atlanta, like Breland, I see why they brought her in, and that's fine just because they'd already lost Luana Bonner. You got to get someone in there to play the four, or at least another, just add to the depth there, because you only had, I don't even think they had Vaughn at that point. So, they just had Turner there and Griner. So they were definitely lacking at that point. So at that spot, so getting Breland, at least you don't have zero or like one there. So I get that. I'm not a big fan, but I'm sure she's great. But then Coffee is like, I mean, maybe it's the same thing with depth, but I just don't see Coffee's place at all in the league. Do you see anything like good about her?
No. I mean, she's a, it's, no. I mean, I don't see where she outperforms the other players on her team. I don't think she'll get very many minutes, barring injuries. I mean, she was struggling to see the floor on the worst team in the league last year, with Brittany Sykes and Jessica Breland ahead of her, neither of whom were, the best, killing it. And so that's just not a good sign.
Yeah.
If she can up her 3-point rate, she has decent size. She can move her feet a bit.
Yeah. She's very athletic. I agree.
But she's athletic. I don't know if I would go very.
I think that's her only, like, the best redeeming quality for her. Her only one is like, just she could jump high and like move her feet and run, but none of it like went somehow. It just in this league, at least, I don't know about her college career, just like didn't mesh with the basketball skills, and that's like I guess I was talking about this with Steven, I think, of like, you can be super athletic, but like if you can't use it, then like there's really not, like, it's not useful. For all that her numbers were decent, she was treated like a non-shooter by the opposing teams, which is tough. Right. I forget what her numbers were, but they weren't great in years past. This year was definitely an aberration, or maybe it's not. Maybe.
And that would be helpful for her, but we'll see.
Right. Yeah. And helpful for the Mercury, you know? So I it's all we'll see. And I think this next point that I just wanted to make is a we'll see, and like I don't really know how to even start with this, but like, you know, the big elephant, the real elephant in the room is just like Diana Taurasi. How is she gonna
Yeah.
be?
Hmm.
She can carry a team. And she's, you know, and that's going to be really the biggest question mark for me. How about you? What are your
Yeah,
thoughts?
I mean, it's health. Mostly it's, you know, the regular in a shortened, maybe a shorter season will be easier, but then again, maybe they
True.
don't have the long training. They have a shorter training camp and the ramp up. This assumes all of this assumes all these players play, which is obviously a big
Right.
question. Renee Montgomery announced today she's sitting not playing this year for
Really?
Atlanta.
Okay.
She's going to focus on the more important social justice work going that she's got going on, which is really admirable. But so we'll see. That's the other thing that could throw a wrench in a lot of our talks is who actually shows up.
Yeah.
But so it's health because I mean there's three sort of things that help a player age well. It's height. Diana Taurasi's got good size. Shooting, she's a good shooter, and passing. So she's got the three. I mean, there's a reason she was still as effective 2 years ago as she was. You know,
Right.
but you know, so it's just really hard to keep, no matter who you are, keep your body past age, you know, keep going.
Yeah.
And unlike some other teams, unlike Seattle, where I think like Sue Bird's obviously the best choice at point guard, but I think Jordan Canada was pretty good last year.
Hmm.
Phoenix is more worrying because if Diana Taurasi goes down, I don't know who they have that even can, you know,
Yeah. You have like
approximate even a little bit of what she offers.
exactly because I mean it's just like they have who Coffee Smith and maybe Cunningham who can play the three. It's just like what is that's not
Yeah. Or
even
shift or shift Shatori Walker or Bree Hartley up, but they're going to be at a real size disadvantage in a
yeah.
lot of matchups. That's going to make it tough.
Right. And I mean yeah, it's going to be tough for this team. I think, like even if DT plays, like I still think it would be a rough time in the front court. I think on at least offensively, it's going to be a grind. Um,
She solves a lot of problems. Her ability to shoot off the dribble solves a lot of problems. So,
yes,
but it not maybe not enough.
right. Well, I mean, it's yeah. So that's the real elephant in the room, at least for me. Just like we'll see with what Diana Taurasi can do. I mean, she's such a big part of this team and this franchise for so long. So, you know, we'll see. What else? Do you have any other topics you want to hit on? Because I do. I'll like the last thing I want to talk about is how they're going to do this year. Like, where are they placing? Kind of. But if you have any other topics you want to go over before we do that, definitely get that in now.
No, I'm happy to talk about where I think they'll place.
Oh, actually, you know what? I forgot to. We kind of talked about salary, and I just wanted to know. I think it's kind of an easy question, but like, who's underpaid and overpaid on this team? I think there's the two. It's the one obvious one is Bria is overpaid, and we talked about that a little bit. I would have, yeah, I probably would have put her at 140, maybe less, 130. I just, you know, if Shakina's 165 and um, you know, Courtney's 185 kind of thing, like Bria Hartley is like not really anyone compared to that. So,
Yeah.
um, and then for me, the other one is that like just based off the old contract, the old CBA is, you know, Diana Taurasi of like 119K. It's just like, what is that?
Yeah.
That's she doesn't deserve that at all. So
The other thing I'll say is that with a maximum in a league with a maximum salary, it's trickier to win a championship if you have a player making the max who's not a top 5 player. So someone like Skylar Diggins Smith at 215 is probably fair, but it does somewhat handicap you because like she's making the same money at, well, Elena Deldon may make slightly a bit more because they can pay her in the off season and there's other things. But generally speaking, she's not making that much different a salary than Elena Deladon. And that just makes it really hard. That's why, you know, one of the reasons basketball, both leagues, you know, NBA, WNBA, the players often win the championship because in a league with salary with a maximum contract, they're able to outperform that contract and provide, you know, excessive value. On a complete market, Elena Deladon would make a lot more than Skylar Diggins Smith, and she does now.
Yeah. Um,
So I'll be interested to see if Skylar Diggins Smith, like how much she lives up to that contract or whether she can exceed it coming
yeah,
back
I
off
mean,
a year off and how well she does.
right. Yeah, that's actually another big question I didn't even think about of like she hasn't played for a year. Neither has Kia Vaughn. I mean, it's just like they've just taken a year. I don't want to say off, but they haven't played for a year. So
Well, yeah,
that's
I mean, obviously Skylar had a child and that was, but she looked okay in the Team USA games, but that's
right.
obviously not the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Dang, I have one more thing to say that I'm forgetting now, of course. Yeah, so well, you want to move on to where you see them placing?
Hmm.
Why don't you go first?
So I think they will probably make the playoffs, but I do think it's going to be a challenge. I think I have them like fifth or sixth um, in the league. Maybe obviously Vegas got hurt by the plum, but I still think they're a bit above them. I think Seattle, Washington, Connecticut. It's those four, and then after that, it's a little harder to tell.
Yeah, I think Minnesota might be a little bit better too. I'm not quite so sure about that, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
I think the guard situation for Minnesota is going to be really interesting to watch, particularly if
Right,
Odyssey Sims doesn't come back. Cecilia Zandolcini just isn't coming over,
right.
um, and
Oh, she's
so
not. She's so fun. I liked her game a lot, but
yeah, so um, Minnesota has a lot of talent, but we'll see.
right. Yeah,
Oh, in
actually,
Chicago, I'd have Chicago above Phoenix.
definitely, definitely. It's kind
Uh,
of like who's below them, I think might be a better question. But it's fine. So it's actually I want to give you some time to talk here about like what you think about, the COVID stuff and playing in Florida. And I want to hear your thoughts on that. Have you written anything on it or not yet?
I
Or
don't think I'm going to write about it because I'm not. I mean, I don't know that I'm that original in general, but I definitely don't think I have any. I try to talk if I have something worth saying, and this is sort of well beyond any expertise I have.
yeah,
But I definitely am somewhat skeptical and growing more so. The numbers out of Florida are not trending great, um, and so I'm not fully on board. I'm not there yet where I think they definitely shouldn't play, but I'm sort of on the fence and growing more skeptical.
right,
Um,
yeah,
we shall see. And obviously, I know that I love me well enough. I know I'm biased towards them playing because I want to see basketball,
right.
and so, you know, I'd probably be more against it if I didn't have didn't wasn't looking forward to a season.
Right. Yeah, I'm also kind of feeling I'm feeling more and more negative each day about it, with basically what you said. The Florida numbers are not decreasing for cases. And I was talking to Snap. It's not a closed system that they're going to have there, regardless of how much they try. Um, it seems like a logistical nightmare, which I've also said many times. I mean, it's just going to be hard to really get this to work. But that's how it's
Yeah.
gonna.
So the sort of the flip side, which I'm hopeful is is which is sort of hard to say, is like it's hard to know when it would be better though. I mean, obviously, the WNBA doesn't have the option to play past October because of foreign commitments by much of the players.
Right.
But for other leagues, particularly, like, is it going to be that much different in December? Like, where? So in some
Right.
ways, are we just going to get it going and try to make it as safe as we can now?
Right.
Because short of a vaccine, are we gonna? I mean, hopefully the numbers go down in places like Florida, but I'm not, and that sort of obviously gets more political, but I'm not super confident that like their governor has the best approach.
Yeah. Right. I mean,
So
I also don't follow politics. I don't like to. Or I
I
try to not
I've,
get into the fire, but yeah.
I follow it very close. I follow it closely, but that's not why I came on your show. So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. So anything else you want to say about that, or closing thoughts on the Merc? Um, uh, Here's your time. If you don't have anything to say, that's fine too.
Yeah, I guess I'll just actually, speaking of politics, maybe I'll be a little political. I'm really impressed with a lot of the WNBA players and how they've been speaking about the brutality, police brutality, the murder of George Floyd. I think continuing to follow, there was a good piece in the ESPN about Maya Moore today by Katie Barnes that I highly recommend people check out and read if they haven't already. Um, and that I think people should think about if you're just sort of tuning in now to this issue, or if you're sort of how you sort of move beyond just the police brutality to other forms of racism. I know a lot of industries, whatever industry you work in, there's issues almost guaranteed. Personally, I'm a librarian, and there's a lot of issues within librarianship of how overwhelmingly white we are.
Mm.
And then, how do you, build on material comforts? Like, how do we get the wealth income gap to shrink? I see a lot of people posting about, the murders, which is good, but I want them to connect that to, like, if you live in a mostly white suburb that opposes all fair housing and all affordable housing, like, how are you going to connect those in your own life? So
Yeah, for sure.
that's it.
Yeah,
Because
it's
empathy is only so good as it turns into action.
yeah,
Like, it's by itself is not that helpful.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's bigger than just police brutality, and that's
That's obviously key, but I think we can use that to then
right.
focus on other areas like reparations and other things.
Yeah. Well, yeah, right. So, before we get more into politics,
Yeah, that's it.
let's
I'm done.
sign off. Yeah. So why don't you remind people one more time where they can find you?
Yep. So on Twitter, number five out basketball, and then you can find my writing. I have about, I think, 4 teams remaining in my season preview, where I sort of do similar to what we did today, where I'm sort of walking through what the choices are over starting lineups and sort of how I see them, what questions I have about various teams at 5outbasketball.com.
Great. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Peter. It was a pleasure.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, for sure. All right, guys. Have a wonderful night.